Most people are trying to fix their life from the outside in. They change the job, the relationship, the routine, the goal, the strategy. But often, the real place that life begins to change is much closer than that. It begins in the relationship that you have with yourself.
If you're actively seeking ways to build your mental toughness, navigate life transitions with grace, or simply find inspiration to keep moving forward, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Art of Beautiful Thinking podcast. The way you speak to yourself, the way you trust yourself, and the way that you abandon yourself and listen to yourself or ignore yourself becomes the blueprint for how you move through the world. Welcome to the Art of Beautiful Thinking. My name is Yvette and I'm here with my co-host Cat. And in today's session, we're actually going to be talking about how your outer life is not separate from the inner relationship that you have with yourself. Now, what is self-relationship? What does that look like? And for me, it's not just about self-care. It's not only, as they say, bubble baths and affirmations and journaling or taking time off. Self-relationship is actually that ongoing inner dynamic between you and you. That's what it actually is.
Absolutely. It's the underrated superpower that we don't tap into. And in our society, definitely in Western society, we are not taught to look inside. We have been taught to look outside for all the answers. And as a result, we're lost.
We're totally lost.
Mm.
Because if you think about it, I mean, I go back to my childhood and some of our audience may know that we both have come from domestic violence upbringings. And in my childhood, I know quite clearly that one of the things that I used to do was I used to go within to get my direction, I suppose, and also to get my center of calm in that, to
Mm.
remain calm.
Mm.
And that started to develop a self-trust within me that I could always go back to myself. And the funny thing, what that programming did though as well was that whenever things went bad, I would go back to myself. But when things were going good, I wouldn't really do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
okay. Yep, yep, yep.
the idea is to get to a point that you are always going within for your direction, for that self-relationship, for that self-belief, for how you feel about life. And it should all come from within that relationship you have with you.
Mm.
And we've spoken about this a number of times on the podcast where we've mentioned that, how we talk to ourselves. Would you talk to your best friend the way that you talk to yourself?
Mm.
And the
Mm.
likelihood is no, you wouldn't, because if your best friend started treating you the way that you talk to yourself, you tell them to basically fuck off. And, but we don't do that to ourselves. We allow ourselves to keep pulling ourselves down. And so the idea is to go, hold on a second, I need to treat me like I would my best friend,
Yeah.
because you are your best friend.
Well, you need to become your best friend.
Correct.
And if you aren't, then believe us when we say that is the very first most important thing to do. Exactly. And you have a different experience to me. When I was young, I was too scared to go inside because my whole emotional and mental state was just pure turmoil. The domestic violence and awful upsets that I lived with meant that my whole inner world was just a mess that I was too scared to look at when I was young. And I also absorbed the message when I was young that there was something wrong with me.
Uh,
So I didn't trust or develop that self-trust in myself. And I became very sort of sensitive and got triggered when people would say there's something wrong with you. And it put me into a cycle over many years of anxiety, becoming more concerned with my position in the world, what people thought of me. And then because you're so kind of, I suppose, unstable and needy, and you go through lots of mood changes and things, and you can't find that stability, it only became like a downward spiral for me. So when that changed for me, I started to notice that people can say negative things, whatever. I just don't care. Just not a
yeah.
problem anymore. And that awful self-talk that had always created my anxiety has actually disappeared for about, I would say, probably the majority of it. I can't really hear it anymore. I think there's still some deep-seated unconscious beliefs that we hold. Like you always say, it's peeling
Mm,
back that onion over the years, over time. And you don't always know that they're there until a
mm,
situation comes up and you go, hang on, what's really going on here? And then you can look underneath that and go, oh, I need to peel back another layer.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the beauty of self growth is that when you're engaged with yourself and you start listening to whether it's your subconscious or your connection to the universe, whatever it is in you, and that let that be your guide, that quiet voice, you're not constantly in a place of permanent, I've got to grow, I've got to grow. You are in a kind of a flow state where when things come up, you can go, oh, okay, I recognize this challenge. All right. And detach, become the observer and go, okay, how's this going to happen? And it sort of happens within, sometimes you're going through a lot of change and challenge, and sometimes you're not.
Well, I also look at it that when you're doing that work, as you said, utilizing personal growth to help you peel back the layers. And when you're peeling back the layers, you start to recognize certain patterns. Also start to speak to yourself with truth as
Yeah.
well. So you're being really honest with yourself about
Yeah.
certain things about, well, okay, I find that I behave in this particular way when this scenario plays out. I get triggered in
Yeah.
these types of environments. And then rather than going, okay, I get triggered, it's why do I get triggered? What is
Yeah.
the thing that's being triggered within me? Is it an
Mm,
insecurity? Is it a lack of belief in self? Is it I feel that I'm not worthy of that? Whatever. But what is it that's triggering me?
yeah.
And then you're unraveling that. And that's part of that personal growth is understanding yourself more and more until you really get to the core of it and you're like, "Oh, well, I can let that go now." Like, I can
But this
totally let
requires
it go.
skill.
And it
Yeah.
no longer has a hold on you once you actually become aware of it and, as you said, become the observer of those patterns of behavior. So I think being really honest with yourself
Mm,
and being, truthful in conversation with yourself rather than going, "Oh, no, 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 there's nothing wrong with me. I'm perfect,"
mm,
is
mm, mm.
to realize that we all have layers.
Yeah,
And that's
sure.
because throughout life, whether it's been your upbringing, whether it's been things that have happened in your school environment, education, corporate world, work, it doesn't matter. You've taken on certain beliefs that
Mm,
aren't necessarily good beliefs as such. They're not positive beliefs. They're not going to really help you. They're going to pull you back. And it's identifying those negative belief patterns and
mm.
seeing what is it that I need to let go of that isn't actually conducive for who I want to be and how I want to represent myself in this lifetime and how I want to actually express myself in this lifetime. So I think it's really important to listen to your own self talk,
Yeah.
and also to listen to the body and your
Mm.
intuition and guidance because they're
Body's
always
a big
there
one.
trying to guide you, always
Yeah.
trying to guide you. And when we get so caught up in the headspace and the
Mm,
little monkey mind goes off and it takes over,
mm.
and then you're actually not able to really feel the body properly. You'll feel it from a stress perspective, but you won't feel what it's trying to guide you to do. And you won't be able to really tap
Yeah.
into intuition as much because
Yeah.
you're allowing the monkey mind to take over. And for
Yeah.
those who probably going, what the hell's the monkey mind? It's actually your little ego personality. And that's a thing that's always trying to do the I'm right, they're wrong, you know, there's nothing wrong with me. Taking no accountability, all those types of things. That is the little monkey mind, but it's also the one that'll tell you all the time that there's something wrong with you, that you're not good
Well,
enough.
it's interesting because what you're discussing is a skill that you need to develop and grow over time, and
Yes.
the negative extreme of sitting with yourself is rumination, where you go round and round in circular thinking and you bash yourself or you have shameful thoughts of shame. I am this problem. I can't fix this. This is just who I am, or fatalistic thoughts. That's the sort of far extreme on that side. And then on the other sort of positive, I suppose, positive thinking side gone mad is, I refuse to look at myself. I'm not going to take any accountability. I'm not going to consider my hand in this. It's all external. Now, either of those are unhelpful because neither of them give you growth. The sweet spot is in the middle where you go, okay, I'm presented with this information. So I need to assess the environment and the situation versus my behaviors, my values, my belief systems. How did I act? What did I do? I'm going to take accountability for whatever I've done wrong. I'm going to have a good look at myself and see what's going on underneath. Why do I get triggered? Why am I behaving this way? I'm not bashing myself. I'm genuinely going on a journey of self-discovery without judgment, without going, "Oh, why am I like this?" None of that comes into it. It's, I'm just going to get to know me better
Yeah.
without.
Yeah,
And then
exactly
you've
right.
got, on the other hand, once you get to know yourself better, as we've discussed on many occasions, you might go, "Well, clearly, I don't fit in this environment, this relationship, or, whatever it is. This is not for me. I'm not the person that actually really enjoys driving around in a sports car. I'd rather have an old I'd rather have an old family vehicle." And everyone told me when I was young that I'd look really good in a red sports car, so I put my 6-foot frame into a tiny little sports car and drove at high speeds that scare me because I'm taking everyone else's beliefs on, when in actual fact, all I want is a comfy old Kluger.
Well, there you go.
That didn't actually happen. I'm just saying that I'm using that as an example.
Yeah, yeah,
You've got to decide. We're funny because we'll research dog ownership more than we'll research what
ourselves.
we ourselves and who we
Yeah,
are. Every single
absolutely.
person you meet is completely different, and people will sit down and they'll go, "Okay, what does my lifestyle look like? What size dog do I want? Where do I live? What am I going to do with it? Do I want a dog that's outdoorsy because I'm a hiker, or am I going to be home on the couch?" We go through all of that process. Not once do we sit there and go, "What sort of human am I?"
Yeah, and I goes back to honouring your needs. It's really about understanding if you understand you, you're then able to honour your needs. You're able
Yeah.
to you know what values and strengths you bring, and we speak about that a lot as well,
Yeah.
understanding what your values are. Because if you don't truly know you and you're just constantly reacting and constantly, there's no responding, it's always reacting,
Yeah.
then you're actually not honouring yourself in any sort of way. And and I love the analogy that you used around the dogs, because I used to use the analogy around travel, that we will actually plan our holidays more than we actually, plan our lives. And it's so true, even when it comes back to your personal growth. What are you doing today to help you grow as an individual?
Yeah.
Are you actively doing things? And then again, it doesn't go back to the bubble baths and just the journaling. What are you actually doing to go deep, to unravel that onion layer, and to really understand who you are at the core, to be
Mm,
able to build a fabulous relationship with yourself and truly understand who you are
mm, mm,
and
mm.
what you're here to express in this lifetime.
Yeah, this is what people say when they go, "Oh, you got to live an authentic life." What does that mean? This
Hmm,
is what that means.
yeah.
And it's funny because I see people and I have friends, and they just like, I've got a friend that said recently, "I've completely given up on attempting to date." I'm like, "Oh, okay. You're still young and attractive. Why is that?" "Oh, look, I just know it's completely pointless. It's just a complete waste of time." But I also know this person probably doesn't have a very good relationship with themselves. And when you don't know who you are terribly well, dating is just like trying on a random bunch of clothes. You're like, "Does this look good on me?" It feels okay for a bit, but then it started to, the sweater started to be a bit scratchy, and it started to ride up. Instead, you go, "Well, what is my body type? What looks good on me?"
Yeah.
We make all these conscious decisions, and we figure out how to hack into what we need on surface stuff. We're really good at that. But when it comes to the deeper stuff, like relationships, like our employment or our education or where we want to go with our lifestyle, no one wants to actually sit there and really dig deep and go, "Well, who am I and what do I value and what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses?" Let's get really honest with ourselves. Why do you think people are so afraid of that radical self honesty?
Well, it's exactly that. It's facing yourself in the mirror. It's the having to look at yourself and go, "Hey, I haven't actually really been honest with myself. I've been living someone else's life. I've been
Yeah.
following, the basically the pack. I
Yeah.
haven't actually been taken that time to step aside and go, who am I really?" And a lot of the times as well, people will fill their life with a lot of stuff, so they don't have to actually,
Yeah. Deal with it.
yeah, they don't have
That
to
was
look at
me.
themselves.
That was me. I used to
Yeah.
be all about my big pay packet, my business, and my money,
Mm,
and don't ask questions any deeper than shallow because I've got a big house and a posh car.
yeah. And so it looks like you've got your life together. It looks like you've got your shit together because that's what everybody says is successful.
They're the
And what
metrics.
I find,
Mm.
success comes from within. So when you start to really understand who you are and you start living life from that place and start expressing yourself from that place and you start aligning the things that are happening on the outside, like your job, your friendships, all of those
Yeah.
types of things,
Yeah.
then they start to adapt
They
to
do.
be, to be in alignment with who you are expressing. And then all of a sudden, that self-trust, that self-worth, the old patterns start to fall away, and your basically outer life starts to reflect that inner relationship.
Yeah.
However, it takes time to get there. That's not something that happens overnight. So your
Yeah.
relationship with yourself is really the most constant relationship that you're going to have. You can't avoid yourself. You are, and that's
People
why I say
try.
that we try by grabbing all of these other things and
Mm,
by masking ourselves or doing what have you, but you can't actually avoid yourself. Wherever you show up, you're going to show up.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
your patterns will show up with that as well, and
Yeah.
your belief systems will show up. And you may sit there going, well, I've got this happening in my life and I'm going to go over here because I want to change that. But you haven't actually changed that internal relationship. And the chances are when you go over here, the same thing's going to happen. And that is why
Yes.
you hear people talking about, especially in a job environment, they'll say, oh, well, I'm just going to stay in this job because if I go to another job, I'll just, it could be hopping
Yeah.
into the frying pan.
Yeah.
Because what you haven't done is actually taken a step back to go, all right, what's really important to me here? What is it that I value about in my job? What is it that I can
Mm,
bring to a job? What are my strengths? And I was
mm.
even having a conversation with someone about this recently, about interview processes and saying, when you go for an interview, it shouldn't just be you rocking up being interviewed. You are interviewing them as much as they are
Yes.
interviewing you to see
And
whether
yes.
you want to work with them. Do
And
you actually
listening.
want to work for them?
Yes, yes. Listening to
You know?
your body. How do you react around that person? Do they make you feel safe, or do you get a little inner recoil when they say
Yeah.
things? That happened to me in a job interview actually, and I chose not to take the job. They interviewed me for a role, and they said, "You're really good," and I went, "Oh, that's very nice, thank you." And they said, we've got this guy, and he's in this other more complex role. We think you'd be amazing in that role." And I went, "Okay, what's happening with him?" And they said, "Oh, his contract ends in 3 months. We'll get rid of him and put you in." And I went, "Hmm." They said, "Just come work for us for 3 months. This is the plan. And then we'll chuck you into his job." And I thought, I don't want to work for people that treat staff like that. So I didn't take the job.
But how many people would take that? Because their ego has just been stroked,
Yeah.
yeah, and they go, "Oh, that's fantastic. They think I'm better than him." They
That
don't
was
think
my
of the other
initial
person.
reaction. That was my initial reaction. I
Yeah.
went, "Oh, that's nice." I went, "Oh, they see that I've got skills." Then I just went, "Ooh, no. Who the hell behaves this way? I can't trust this person."
Well, the chances are they'll do the same thing to
Of
you if they come
course.
across somebody else who they perceive to be
Of
better than you.
course.
But we
And then
don't,
yeah.
and that's when if you understand your values and understand
Mm.
what you bring, you'll be able to look at that and go, "Okay, I can now make a clear decision on this," rather than going, "Oh, my ego's just been stroked and they think I'm wonderful and I'm and
It's a very unsafe.
I have to feel as if I'm wonderful because I don't feel wonderful,
I
and I
already
need
know
someone
what
to
my
tell me
skills
that."
are. I don't need external validation. I know
Exactly.
I can do that job, but I know that I don't need him to put me into that job.
Yeah,
And the interesting thing was, I heard about 6 months later that he'd been given the ass, that manager.
there you go.
So, yeah, and it seemed again like one of those workplaces where, it was very nepotistic and cronyistic. And I find that kind of capricious sort of stuff very difficult to work within. I think most people do,
Yeah.
because you can work as hard as you want. And maybe the guy that was doing the job was doing a great job. I don't know. Maybe it just seemed like he didn't like him.
Yeah, and there you go. And
Don't
so
want that.
I think I think you've really got to understand you in order to be able to be in a situation like that and go, aha, I can see what's actually playing out here. And no, I choose not to take on this job because it actually doesn't align to my values. Because I would not want to be treated that way.
I wouldn't treat
It's
another human being that way. If they weren't doing well in
exactly.
their job, I would discuss it with them and talk about how we could either improve their skills or, work out a plan. But yeah, that's just, yeah. And my body, and this is what you were saying before, my body went "Uh," like that. Everything tightened up and I went, ooh, like a little recoil. And if you feel that in your body, that is your body actually yelling at you, going, don't do it. But we override that a lot, don't we? Because we think, oh, got to get the money.
Totally. I remember going, this is years ago now, when we were living in Melbourne, and I went for a job at one of the banks, one of the big banks, and it was doing coaching stuff at one of the big banks. And I had so many interviews. I mean, my gosh, I
Yeah,
think I
yeah.
had like 6 different interviews. And I'm just thinking, freaking hell, it's just a coaching role. But I remember interview 1 was fine, interview 2 wasn't too bad, but after interview 3, I walked out of that interview with a headache. I just got this instant headache,
Yeah.
and my whole body just felt, and it wasn't like they had said anything nasty or anything like that, but inside of me, it was like, "You don't want to work for these people."
You just knew.
And my body's way of doing
Mm.
that was to give me a headache, and I still went
Mm.
through all 6 of the interview process, right?
6, wow.
6. And because the very last one was with, like, C-suite. So I was in a room full of 6 or 7 senior executives, who were then asking me about certain stuff because the whole coaching thing was to be coaching people at all different levels.
Yeah.
And I remember being in there and actually feeling nauseous. I wanted to throw up.
Oh gosh,
And
okay.
that wasn't because I was nervous. I've dealt with
Mm-mm.
C-suite before. I was just
Yeah,
going, I
sure.
don't want to be in a room with these people. And so it was so interesting. And then I got a week later them saying, "Oh, you didn't get the role because you actually didn't explain yourself very well." It's because I didn't fucking want to explain myself very well to you. And and I was just going, I listened to my body, even though I went through the whole process because I thought, I'll stuff it, just go through the whole thing and see where it goes. I knew that I did not want the role. And it was only, I think, probably a few weeks later that I got a role like I actually ended up getting a role here in Canberra, and we moved from Melbourne to Canberra. But
Mm.
it was just so everything in my body was going no, 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 and I was listening to it, but I
Yeah.
also wasn't because I kept showing up to the
Yeah, yeah,
interviews.
yeah.
And so, and that's the thing when you're actually disconnected from yourself,
Mm.
you don't really take
Pick up on
those
that.
signs. You don't
Mm.
really hear what the body's telling you or what
Mm.
your emotions are trying to tell you.
Yeah.
And you really would be looking, generally speaking, you're looking at success externally. You're not
Yeah.
looking at success from inside. And when you do
Mm.
achieve success externally, it can feel quite hollow. And I think that's
Mm.
why some people get to that point where they have achieved quite a bit of success and still go, "Oh God, I'm still not happy. I'm still not satisfied," because
Yeah.
they haven't really sat within themselves and gone, what is it that my soul is actually wanting to express,
Yeah.
rather than going, oh, this is what everybody else is doing, and this is what our definition is of
Yeah.
success in
Yeah.
society is. So therefore, that's what
Yeah.
I've got to go for.
This is the massive mortgage that I need to service. This is
Yeah,
the expensive car that I've got. I've just got to work. I've just got to work. And I'm like, well, maybe we just need to live in a smaller house. Maybe we look around at the kind of work that makes your heart sing, and you may temporarily need to downsize and do different things. And then over time, you might actually become really good at whatever it is that you love, or some other opportunity will pop up because you are doing things that are aligned with you and gives you so much more energy because you don't have to fight yourself every day.
yeah.
That's,
And that, I mean, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with wealth. I don't think there is.
oh
I
God, I
think
love
wealth is,
wealth. Are you kidding?
yeah, I
No
think wealth
way.
is a great way to express yourself.
Mm, mm,
However, I say that from a perspective of when you understand you and you are building wealth from that point of view, it
mm.
ends up becoming something of joy as opposed to you just go, I feel hollow. And yeah, I've got all of this
Yes,
nice stuff around
absolutely.
me, but I don't,
Absolutely.
there's no happiness here. So when you build it from that inner relationship with self,
Mm.
it ends up being something of joy and
Yep.
something, as I said, that you are able to fully express yourself and give back, as well, to be
A
able to
nice
circulate
purpose.
back into
Yeah.
community, to uplift other
Mm,
areas of
mm.
your life or someone else's life, for instance, to be able to invest your money in, say, projects that actually make a fabulous impact
Yeah, my
to
dad
other
was a very
communities.
successful businessman in London. He started his own business from scratch, and then he would do refrigeration. He worked with the likes of Gordon Ramsay, doing all their restaurants, all those kinds of things. I think the highlight of his life was he put a cold room. He fixed up the cold room in the Queen's kitchens. He said, "This cold room is not working correctly. It's too old, and I'm afraid the Queen's cream cakes are not being kept at the correct temperature. So we need to rip it out and start again." That was the highlight. But he worked for himself. Now, he found it very hard, obviously, to get the business going. He absolutely flogged himself in the early days. But once he got it going, he did very well out of it. He enjoyed it. He sponsored football was something he was right into. He sponsored local groups and things. So put that wealth back into the community, was able to look after his family, be free. Then someone came along and offered to buy the business off of him and keep him on as a consultant for the business. And they offered him a lucrative deal and then offered to pay him a lot of money to continue on. And he agreed because he thought, oh, well, I'm getting older. This is cool. I'll be able to. And then it was just, they took over the business. They basically bought his name, kept him on as a figurehead. And they were like, but we're paying you a lot of money. He's like, yeah, but you're completely going against everything I've ever done in this business and the whole reason I've built it. And I don't like that you're using my name and my connections and my network and you're doing all of this. Within 6 months, he could not work there anymore. And they were like, well, we're going to penalize you. We're not going to keep this money. He goes, I don't care. I'm out. And then he went off and restarted his own business again, and away he went. It's funny, there's horses for courses, but you've got to, and I don't think he's ever, I mean, I have to say he's one of the least self-aware humans I know. The minute that you start talking about, have you ever thought about looking inside or considering things, he's very, very anti, finds it terrifying, just cannot. And I see this ingrown men and women, they fall over in a heap because the idea of going inside and having a look, it is daunting. But it doesn't need to be terrifying. And it's such a shame because all of the answers literally lay within. It saves you so much time once you do it because then you don't have to keep trying on different T-shirts to see if they fit.
Exactly. And that's what I love about our blueprint, the Authentic Life Blueprint, is that it's a beginner's guide, really, to personal growth. And it really helps you to understand the first couple of modules there are actually about you looking at certain negative belief systems that you may be holding on to, certain patterns of behavior, and also the values. They're in the early chapters of the book. I look at it almost like I get excited about investigating it because I kind of go, I'm getting to know myself. I'm actually getting to understand myself. And I get excited about that because I find that the better I understand me, the better I actually understand other people as well.
Absolutely.
And it also means I become a bit more compassionate with people as well, because I get where they're coming from. I understand their fears, their doubts. Even though their life story may be different than mine, the underlying feelings are usually the same.
Yeah. I found that the workbook was brilliant because, I mean, we all talk about personal growth. It's a very ephemeral term, but the workbook gave me a structure. It gave me act as if you're starting from zero and you know nothing. And you start there and then you work your way through. So it was really good. It was simple to follow. It was also challenging because it was challenging enough because you're looking at yourself and you're doing the work on yourself. And it was an amazing discovery tool that you use to figure out stuff. It kind of, you can spend 20 years reading self-help books and going to looking at podcasts and doing all the things. This just went bang, 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 bang. And I like that because I want a result. That's what I love about it.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. It's the blueprint is, it's not about becoming someone new. It's actually about becoming you, the real you. So you're uncovering the truth of who you actually are, and you're getting rid of all of those layers of basically crap that you've actually put on yourself, and the masks and things
Other
like that.
people's ideas and rules that don't mean anything to you. They don't fit you.
You know, when you asked me earlier on, why is it that people don't do that? I think that's why, because they have lost themselves so much, is that they're scared of, who will I uncover? What if I don't like who I am when I uncover all of that? And the chances are you will absolutely love who you are.
Of course you will.
You're going to go through certain aspects where you go, oh, I didn't like that behavior and I've got that and that. But remember, that's the programming. And you can get rid of that and reprogram.
Of course you can. And you go through a process of forgiving yourself as well.
You do.
You know, I've made mistakes. I've fucked up a lot. That's okay. I'm in the fuck up club. It's fine. We all are, actually. If we're completely honest with ourselves, all of us fuck up. I mean, I don't know a single child on this earth that didn't learn to walk by falling on its ass continuously.
Oh, yeah. Well, we all did, didn't we? Every single one of us.
Yeah, we're so averse to making mistakes is the problem.
Oh, we are.
We see mistakes as a failure. They're not.
No.
They're a learning experience that are necessary, and it's a humbling experience. I've made shitloads of mistakes, but my God, the biggest mistakes I make launch me on the fastest trajectory forward. Like, it's that old pulling the arrow back and then letting it go. The further you pull it back, the more velocity it reaches. You know, that's how it works. And we are also so hell-bent on conforming and no longer challenging. That has become a real, I don't know why, that's become something that we do. People see assertiveness and challenging as aggression, and it's
Yeah,
not. They're
it's
two
not.
different
No,
things. They're two
no.
different things. If you are willing to stop, take stock of a situation, ask honest questions, and then make honest, um, I suppose, extrapolate honestly from the evidence that you're given and have a sensible, reasoned conversation about that, that is not aggression. That's that's just called critical thinking.
It is, and there's that whole concept of how dare you have a different opinion than me? We're meant to have exactly the same opinion, and if everybody in the world had the same opinion, it'd be a very, very boring place. It seriously would.
Well,
We
yeah.
wouldn't be all doing exactly the same thing, and again, very, very boring. It's
Yep.
and when people do kind of set themselves aside, which is a form of self-abandonment to please other people
Yeah.
around them, like, "I have to conform," as you were
Yep.
saying,
Yep.
then you're just losing yourself in that, and it's just another mask that you're putting on. You're actually pretending to be something that you are not,
You'll get
and that
results in the
causes.
short term. You'll get
Yeah,
results in the short term, but they'll be minimal results, and in the
correct.
long term, it will kick your ass. You're gonna
It'll
really
actually it'll
hurt.
actually cause more damage than good when you start
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah.
And I think, it's something that I usually say to a lot of my coaching clients. So many people are concerned about what other people think of them. So they go, "I'm not gonna do that because of blah, blah, blah," or, "What is that? I've just been in a meeting and gosh, they probably didn't like me," or the social anxiety or this or that, and we get so caught up in what other people think of me.
Mm,
The other thing too is that other person is actually caught up in the what other people think of me as well.
mm.
So everybody's thinking about what does that other person think of me?
Yeah.
And really, the other person isn't really thinking of you. They're thinking of themselves about what the other person is thinking of them. So it's just
Yeah.
really, really bad mindset that we all have of being concerned about what other people
Yeah.
think. And
Absolutely.
no one really cares about you. They care about themselves.
Well, I mean, I've been in workplaces where, and I don't give a shit, honestly. I'm there to work,
Yeah,
I'm there to be professional, and that's it. But I've been in workplaces that don't like that, and it paints a target on your back because you're not conforming to what they want. But those are just toxic, unhealthy workplaces, so I'm
yeah,
no longer in those
correct,
workplaces.
correct. That's all it
Um,
is.
and and it's just immaturity. And the other funny thing, I learnt this lesson years ago. My eldest daughter went to a very posh school in New South Wales, and it was a private school, and there were a lot of posh, lovely ladies that were, very rich, and they spoke like this, and they were exclusive, and they had their exclusive little clique. And my daughter became friends with one of the daughters of the clique. So once I was invited to one of the birthday parties, of course, because my daughter was invited along at the mansion with all the other posh people. And it was really interesting because I just stood back and watched, and what I saw were lots of people drinking a lot of expensive champagne, dressed in their very expensive clothing, and um, a lot of focusing on who was looking at what, who was getting attention, talking behind each other's back. I overheard a lot of conversations where people were smiling to one person's face, then running them down. It was like a strange political one-upmanship thing. And I was so, apart from observing that, I found it terribly boring. And I thought, wow, I don't belong here. And I never went back to any of their things ever again. I was like, sorry, no. And then they were offended that I didn't want to hang out. So I'd rather hang out with the witches from the hills that live in the hut, because they'll have interesting conversations, and we'll talk about
Totally.
what's yeah, we'll talk about the environment and the earth and what's going on with us and how our different things, and actually have a really juicy, interesting conversation. They may not have 2 cents to rub together, but that's where I'd rather be.
Well, I mean, for me, it's about being in a relationship, any friendship, anything like that, or even a working relationship where there is complementary. It's not, and I don't care whether you are rich or poor or whatever. It actually
Absolutely.
comes back to me about who you are being as a person. And I
100%.
would also much prefer to be around someone who has a very good relationship with themselves than someone who is extremely insecure that
Ugh.
you have to tiptoe around because
Yeah,
anything you say may offend them. And that's, for me, am always attracted to very strong-minded people who are
me
usually
too.
quite confident within themselves.
Oh god,
And,
I love it. I love being
yeah,
able to know that I'm safe, even to disagree and go, "Oh, I don't agree on that point. Let's have a robust conversation." That's what life is made of. But I think these days we are, and certainly I think the younger generation definitely, told conform.
They
conform,
are, and
conform.
it's a shame because it goes back to that self-abandonment. You're actually staying quiet when something actually really matters to you, or,
Yeah,
you're choosing to look good instead of to what feels true to you.
yeah,
And I think every time you actually self-abandon yourself, you're you are weakening that level of self-trust within you,
absolutely.
and
Yeah, yeah.
and you're not honoring yourself at all. And each time you do that, you're gonna have to
Mm.
rebuild it
You
over and
are,
over again.
and once you start relying on other people for your safety over your own self-trust, you're in big trouble
Yeah.
because no one can hold you completely. No one can take the weight of you completely. You've got to take it yourself.
Exactly. And is it okay for people not to like you? Yeah. Not
Pick a number
everyone's
and
gonna
get in
like you.
line.
Not everyone's gonna like you, but those
Yeah.
people who do like you, and those people who like you for who you truly are, that's your inner circle. They're the
I'd
people
rather,
who hang with you.
and I just don't have the capacity to have a shit ton of friends
No,
because the relationships that I want to have are
I've had a hard
deep.
enough time keeping up with the friends that I've got.
I know. I
Oh,
want I want deep relationships with people that, and when I love hard, and I want important relationships like that are safe
exactly.
and they matter. I don't want 500 friends that I just have shallow exchanges with all the time.
Mm.
Who wants
Mm.
that?
Oh, I
Yeah.
hear you.
It's
Gosh.
boring. I mean, look,
But
look, I'm all for. I understand
yeah.
neurotypical humans want to have small talk, and I understand the social rituals. I get it. I'm happy to say hello and talk about the weather, and I'm happy to see people do well, and I like that, and yeah, hope people are well and wish them well. I just don't want to have, the level of relationships I think that I like to have with humans. Just can't have too many.
No. And I think it's probably because I think they say something like 1 or 2% of people are actually willing to do the personal growth work on themselves. They're actually willing to really look at themselves and pull back the layers.
Yeah,
And so when you come across people that are doing that and you go, "Oh, my people. Here are my
yeah,
people."
yeah, yeah. Hello,
And,
hello.
and
Come
because
to
there's
the
not very
come to the
many of us to
tribe.
start off with, it's it's a cool thing. It's a really cool thing
I
when you do
remember
come.
you said that to me actually when you were down visiting. Was it last year you came to Tassie or the year
No,
before?
the year before actually.
God almighty, that's gone quick.
Yeah.
You
Last year
said
was
to
New
me,
Zealand.
yeah, that's right. You said to me, when I meet strong, intelligent women who've got a good sense of humor that I want in my circle, I grab them with both hands and I draw them
Yeah,
to
pull
me.
them
I was
in.
like,
Yeah.
yay.
I do. It's like,
It's
"You are
awesome.
my people." Thank you very much.
Exactly. And that's what I
And I
love
think
about
that's
being around
because
people who do personal growth too.
yeah, and I understand the reason for that, that I'm not intimidated by women who are strong and confident or things like
Yes,
that because I understand me, and I understand that I'm strong and I have an inner confidence.
that's right.
And because I understand my authentic self,
Yeah,
I know who I am. Am
yeah,
I still unraveling bits and pieces? Absolutely. I
of course.
still am. I'm always
Yeah,
learning something new about myself. But I would say that I'm stepping more into the path of my authentic self than I am of my conditioned self. So my
absolutely.
conditioned self is becoming less and less, and my
Mm,
authentic self is coming out of its shell more and more. And that I think it sets me up in order to know what type of relationships I want in my life.
yeah, yeah,
What aligns to me, even from a job perspective, what type of employment do I want? If I want
yeah.
employment or do I want to
Mm,
work for myself, what does that look like?
mm,
And what type of a company would I want to work for? What are their values? Do their values align to my values?
yep.
And then when I go in there to meet the people, are those people actually my people?
Are
And,
they? Are they?
are
Yeah.
they?
Are
And
they gonna be,
I don't mean to say that I don't ever want to be challenged because obviously I
of
do. I'm up
course.
for a challenge, but it's
Yes.
understanding I want good leadership. I
I
want
want good
people who
leadership.
know the direction and what they're going in. I don't want lies. I don't want dishonesty, and I don't want backstabbing. So
Correct.
it's for
Mm,
me, I'm very clear on that.
yeah,
And then you set those boundaries. You set boundaries around your different life pillars of what you want in those different life pillars. So what is it that you want in your health? What is it that you want in your relationships? What is it that you want in your financial,
yeah,
pillar? All of those types of things. So you've got your different 5 pillars of life. So have a look at them and figure out what is it that
mm,
you want and come from a perspective of your authentic self.
yep.
And the only way to come from the perspective of your authentic self is to understand you and to start having a really good
Exactly.
relationship with yourself.
Exactly. You cannot possibly, make a life that suits you until you know who the fuck you are.
Oh,
It's
totally.
basic logic, but it's something, it's interesting because we used to encourage, we had witch, I think we talked about this, we had witches, we're in touch with the earth. This is what we used to be like before we went through Catholic Constantine and his wonderful ways, and everyone being brought into the church. So what people were taught was, and what we used to do was look inside ourselves, and we used to feel that energy and our connection to the earth and the universe and who we were. And we used to work that out with other wise people around us that we'd bounce ideas off of, but they would always come back to, you got to do what you feel is right for you and let you walk your path within reason, of course. Then I think with the advent of sort of organized religion, it was all about shifting it to what do other people think. And then we became so focused. I mean, it's always important to have your community with you. Obviously, we lived in villages and things, and we were able to make sure that we had some sense of community. But nowadays, it's a weird paradox because we're very disconnected from our communities. We're very, very insular in our homes. We all live in our own separate homes, and we all go off and do our own thing. But the communities that we're sort of forced to live in our workplaces, and our families, I suppose, there's a lot of pressure to conform and to not rock the boat and to do and to think and to be how people want you to. And so we're encouraged to look externally for validation. Is this the right thing for me to do? If something keeps coming up as a question and it keeps coming back, all the time as a problem, and you keep going out to people and saying, how should I do it? And they keep saying, do it this way, and that way is not working, and that problem keeps coming back, that is a clear indicator that you need to look at making some changes.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean,
Clear
I
indicator.
kind of look at the conditioned self. If you think about it, what's the difference between authentic self versus conditioned self, for
Yeah.
instance?
Yeah.
And, the conditioned self is always looking for, as you said, that external approval.
Yeah.
It's usually in survival mode as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
we build ourselves based on either family expectation or the expectations of the people around us, the people that
Yeah.
we put on a pedestal and go, what do they
Yeah.
expect of us? Or
Yep.
society norms. And also, not just norms, but the timelines that society places on us
Oh, yeah.
and our
Big
past
time.
pain. There's also the
Yeah.
fear of rejection, all of those types of things. And as
Mhm.
you just said before, that need to be impressive. You want to be needed, you want to be successful, liked, safe, all of those types of things. They're all
Mm.
part of that conditioned self.
Do you think that
And
changes as you get older? Because I think the older I've gotten, the less I give a shit, honestly.
well, I
Like,
think I think as we get older, we do start to reflect more, and that's
mm,
why we start to do more self-reflection as we get older. I mean, you get some people who don't, and they end up getting called grumpy old people. But the ones who actually do self-reflection and look at things and start to realize what's important to them in life, because I think as you get older, you're getting closer to D-Day,
yeah, yeah.
and so everything becomes, well, I've only got so much time left and I want to make sure that I'm doing the best things I can possibly do in that time.
Mm,
What are the things that are important to me?
yeah.
Oh, and you'll always get people, someone who is older, who will say, "Yeah, the things that I used to value when I was young, not important to me
They've
now."
definitely changed for me.
They
They've definitely
totally
changed for
change.
me. As you get older, I think you become, if you're able to do the personal growth and start coming back to yourself, you
Yeah,
definitely become more driven by purpose.
you do.
Once
Yeah,
you discover that, which is whatever that might be for you. And I also think you move through ages and stages in your life. Like I was saying to my husband last night, it's boring being at home now. For years, I had my own business, and then I had a uni, and then I had a career, and then I had kids. Now I'm like, okay, the kids don't need me anymore. What's the next step?
yeah. And
I
that's
mean, I
and I
just,
think that's
how
the other
people,
thing that's really important, especially for women,
yeah, yeah,
as you get older, because as the kids do get older and they leave home, a lot of them have put their identity around of being a mother and
yeah.
raising these children, and
I have
then the
never
kids
done
don't
that.
need them as much anymore, so then you go, "Well, who am I?"
I
You
have
know
consciously, it was you know what, my aunt had a really good conversation with me when the babies were young, and she warned me of that. She said, I'm going to tell you now. She said, I've seen a lot of women around us, and she gave me some examples of our shared family. She said, empty nesters, these women become shells of themselves because they build their entire identity around being a mother. She said, never do that. Never do that. You're first and foremost a human. You're a your own person. You are a business owner. You're a wife. You do this sport. All these different aspects of your personality own all of that and then say another aspect of my personality is being a mother. If you make your entire identity around anything external, change is inevitable. And the change is always inevitable, internal or external, but at least when it's internal change, it's coming from within you. And then you can roll with those punches and you've got the confidence to go, okay, this is up to me. I'm going to do stuff for myself. If you're always hanging on to other people, and I've got this programming because I've watched my mother go through 5 marriages. She's currently looking after her very sick husband, who is probably beyond her capacity to care for him, really, won't accept any help, won't do anything, and just continues to put all of her needs aside and sacrifice. And the sacrifice isn't decreasing as she gets older, it's increasing to the point where she recently had pneumonia because she's exhausting herself. And then she'll say to me, oh, I'm completely exhausted and I don't know what to do. And then I'll go, well, here's all of these social workers and all the rest of it, and like da 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 da. And she'll go, no, I don't need any help. I'm just like, okay, then. Well, and we had a conversation around self-abandonment. That was very enlightening. And I said to Mum, all you've ever done your whole life is spend all of your energy, even to the detriment of us, on your various husbands who've up and left you or treated you badly, or you've never felt. She's never been happy in any of her marriages because she's always looked to the man to set the tone, to provide the happiness, to do all of the things. So she's given her power away completely. And then when things haven't gone according to plan or how she wanted them to look and wasn't clear enough about what she wanted, she then builds up resentment because she didn't get what she wanted.
Yeah. And
But
it's quite typical.
you
I
give your
mean,
power
if
away.
if I go back to what you were saying earlier on about when you were having that conversation with your auntie and she was saying,
Don't do
"Don't
it.
lose your identity," type of thing.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference is people look at what they do as who they are,
Oh, God,
and
yeah.
who you are is very different to what you do. So
Yeah.
you are you look at it and you go, "You do motherhood because you are a mother,"
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
that's not who you actually are
Yeah,
eternally.
that's
That's
right.
what you do. You are in the process of raising a child. That's what
Yeah.
you do,
Yep,
and it is your responsibility to look after that child and things like that. But
yep.
that's not who you are. And a lot of us in life, and especially in our jobs, we go, "Oh, that's who
Mm,
I am." No, 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 no. That's what you do for a living. That's not who
yes.
you are as a person.
Big danger in that. I
Yeah.
remember I asked my sister-in-law once when she popped up and when I'm getting married, we're like, oh, this is new. We didn't even know you had a boyfriend. Very, very quickly went from being together to, I think they got engaged within 3 months, then married within the year. Disastrous, disastrous. Anyway, I said, oh, what's he like? She said, oh, he's a pilot. I said, no, no, what does he do? Not what does he do for a job? What's he like? She went, yeah, he flies planes. 100% what you just said. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of the time, one of the big mistakes we make as well, and I know that I felt this when I stopped working in probation and parole in that role. Like I had an identity built around that and I loved it.
Mm.
That identity was, I knew what I was doing. It was very structured, very clear, and I really enjoyed the work. And I grieved when I couldn't do that work anymore because I knew that I wouldn't be happy doing it in a completely different cultural environment down here that would lead me to more heartache. I mean, I could have stuck it out longer, but it would have just made me completely miserable. And I grieved that identity. But it was, it's important to understand, yeah, we are not our jobs. And
No, we're not. And I
you
think that goes
learn.
back to that conditioned self. The conditioned self is looking at the titles or what have you as your
Yeah,
identity, and it's not really who you are. And that's when you look at the authentic self. The authentic self is really that quieter, more truthful inner voice, the one that you know eggs you on, that doesn't
yeah.
actually pull you down, the one that tells you that
Inspiration.
you are good enough.
Yeah,
That it's the part of you that knows what feels aligned and what
yeah.
doesn't feel aligned,
Yep.
and it doesn't need to perform.
Oh,
There
that's a big one. It doesn't
there's
need to
no
perform.
performance.
No,
That's the other aspect of it, and
no.
it's seeking expression and not approval.
And when you
So
can have relationships with partners, friends, work colleagues, or an environment where you don't need to perform, you can, and I'm probably not 100% yourself, I wouldn't think really in any of those environments completely, obviously. But if you're up there, if it's sort of 70% or better that you can be yourself, then that is a pretty goddamn good
mm,
environment. You don't
oh,
want to share
totally.
absolutely every single part of yourself because clearly you need to keep some professional boundaries and things in place. But yeah, those are the good places. They're the good things. And you learn that by doing that structured, who am I? Where do I belong? What are my values? What are the
Yeah.
things that make me really tick? What are the things that stress me out? Yeah,
Well,
it's a process.
you're seeking the truth, the truth of who you are, and you're not looking for an image.
Yeah.
That's the other aspect of it.
And
So
you know,
your authentic self.
the funny thing is we encourage, I think we get this wrong. We encourage kids to go to school, go through grade 12, and by the end of grade 12, choose a university degree or a career or whatever. And they're not ready. They haven't done the inner voyage that you need to do. They don't know who they really are. They haven't really decided at this stage. And yet we expect them to set their entire life up, their entire trajectory, go and do a degree or whatever you've got to do, or whatever it is in your training, and stick at that forever. I mean, that's, I think, a bit unrealistic.
Well, it's also setting people up for the workforce. That's what schooling's for. It's to
Yeah,
set you up
sure.
for the workforce. And
Yeah.
then again, from a society perspective, we go, oh, that's what success is. Success is whatever you're doing as a
Yeah.
job.
Yep.
And that is just society programming. That is not success. And how many people, something like, I think 80% or 90% of people, I can't remember it's a really high percentage, are really unhappy in their jobs.
And
And they
hang it.
could be people who have actually gone and done, a
Mm,
university degree or two or three,
mm,
and they've, jumped around a little bit, but they've gone, this is not what I want to do, because
yeah.
they haven't stopped and gone, who am I? And I think when we look at the education system, we don't talk about personal growth. We look at personal growth from education. Oh, this is what you're learning. This is what you're learning.
Just pass
Like
the theory.
mathematics and science and
Mm,
psychology and social
mm,
sciences and, all of these types of things.
mm.
But nowhere in there is there personal growth or personal development or understanding who you are. And that kind of is meant to come from, I suppose, religion. And religion doesn't do that either. Religion tells you how to act. It
Yeah.
doesn't actually help you understand who you are at the core. And it's something that you can use from a values perspective, but again,
Mm,
it's the religious values. Are they actually your values? And
mm,
so
mm,
it's really, I think, you've really got to understand you
mm, mm.
to get the idea of what is important to you in life. And as I said, the authentic self is about what you're here to express.
Yeah.
So, who are you?
Mm,
Do you
mm.
know who you are? Do you know what you want to express in this lifetime? And if you don't, then it's about, well, how are you living? Are you living from that causation, or are you actually wanting to change and understand who you are so you can evolve in this lifetime and really understand who you are? And if you look at Buddhism teachings, and Buddhism is not a religion, it is a philosophy, it is a way of thinking, a way of life.
Yep.
When you look at Buddhism, it's all about understanding who you are
Mm.
so you can then get rid of the struggle of the mental game that you play
Of
and the
trying to
struggle of life.
shoehorn yourself into a life that doesn't suit you. And
Yeah.
and it's funny because, yeah, I've worked with, we both have worked with a lot of people who are clearly really struggling. But they are, the minute that you say, well, look, maybe you need to look inside and make some changes, it's terrifying. Again, like you say, I mean, there's the daunting aspect of looking at yourself, but a lot of people are trapped in friendships, relationships, friendship groups, where also, and this is funny because Joe said this to me a while ago. He said, I've grown so much because good relationships make you grow. Together, both of us have grown a lot in the 10 years that we've been together. He said, I am a very different person to who I was when we first got together. And I said, me too. Me too. We've both grown a lot. And it's very draining to go back and be around the people, for example, parents or whatever that live interstate, who have an idea of who you were 10 years ago and they're still operating on that. You can really notice it. And you're like, well, no, thanks. Actually, I don't drink that anymore. Or, yeah, no, I've given up that because I know it's bad for me. And I've changed. And that they can get quite offended and quite upset,
Well,
can't they?
I will never forget going to a cocktail party a few years back now and having a chat to someone that I hadn't really spoken to in probably, I don't know, a long time, very long time. And we got onto the subject of work, right? And I was sort of saying to him, oh, so what are you doing now? And those types of
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
And he told me what he was doing. And then he said to me, so you're on the help desk, aren't you? And I kind of went, what? And he
What?
goes, you're on the help desk. And I went, okay, 30 years ago, I was on the help desk,
Yeah.
and I was only on a help desk for probably about less than 12 months, and
My
then I
entry
moved
level job
into
that I did back way back when.
yeah, yeah, and but it was exactly that. He still pictured me in
Bizarre.
his head 30 years later that I was still on a help desk, and then he goes, "Oh, so you've moved on," and I went, "Yeah, I'd hoped that I would've."
What did you expect? That I would just keep going at my entry level job forever? Not that
Exactly.
I'm knocking people
And
that do
I
that, but
actually looked at him and I said, "So you do, solution architect work now. Is that what you did 30 years ago?" And he goes, "No, no, it's not." And I said, "Exactly." It's just like, "Dude, come on."
yeah, right. God. Yeah,
And
it's crazy, isn't
it was
it?
just amusing because it exactly goes back to that. People have a picture of what you
Mhm.
used to be like and think that you're still like
Yeah.
that. And I
Yeah.
mean, in some instances, yeah, some people don't grow from that.
Yeah,
But
some people don't.
a lot of people do change over their life.
Yep.
They will change jobs, or they'll change this, or they'll change that, and there is some level of growth,
Mm.
but it's not necessarily going into that deep personal growth. And that was the other funny part about it is I think within 25 years of that, I've been doing personal growth. So imagine how much I have actually
Completely
changed.
different human. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
completely different. And then I think this is the thing where people, if you look at it and you go, well, yes, personal growth, as you mentioned before, it's hard, and a lot of people don't want to face it and they don't want to challenge it. And again, I'm going to go back and say, well, that's what the Authentic Life Blueprint is about. And the whole concept of that was to provide
Yeah.
a guide that was to introduce people to an
Mm.
inner framework that was
Yeah.
actually quite easy to follow, and that they could just get all the tools that they need and have the self reflection that they need. But also, if they
It is
needed that
useful.
more deeper guidance, then you've got the coaching program attached to that.
And it's
So,
useful. Like I did, just as an out of interest, I think you knew I did another personal development guys online
yep.
30-day challenge. And I was after doing the workbook just because I thought, oh, I'll just, that'd be interesting. I'll learn something. And I just went, the fuck did I pay for this for? It's rubbish. I just got an email every day with a single little, think about this today. This is a new concept. How about you think about this? And I was like, okay. So, and I think there's a lot of that out there. I think there's a lot out there where people, I mean, and look, it's important to make these concepts, which are quite large, as you've done, bring them to the point where you can get them as a beginner. But that was just, they dumbed it down so much that and didn't actually give you anything practical to do to get any
Yeah,
results. I'm
yeah,
results driven. I don't want to just read something and go, oh, that's nice, gave me a warm fuzzy. I want to actually take something that's practical that I can put into my life on an
yeah,
everyday basis and start shifting and making changes with things that are bothering me.
absolutely. And that's why I created the workbook, because I am someone who's like that myself. I like
Yeah.
to actually implement what I've learnt,
Yeah.
because that's the only way to really get it into your heart and understand it properly is
Yep.
through implementation. And
Exactly.
then through that, you will start to see the changes. If it's just, oh, well, I've just read something and I've got the knowledge of it, but I'm not implementing it, you won't see any change. And
No.
so it's really important, hence, again, why the inner framework there of the Authentic Life Blueprint, each module will build upon the previous one.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
just to give our audience a bit of an idea, what it actually includes, what the blueprint includes, you'll actually start to get a picture of who you are. You do a pre assessment to figure out where you are now. And at
Mm.
the end of it, you'll do a post assessment. So, it actually gives you a really good gauge of how much you've grown throughout the program.
Yep.
You get a concept of what you value, or actually not just a concept, a really deep understanding of what you value, what you need in your life, what feels aligned, what doesn't,
Mm.
what no longer fits, what your body is communicating to you. So we do a whole module on understanding how to connect back into your body, sorry, and what your body is actually communicating to you. Also, what your patterns are teaching you. So some
Mhm.
self-reflection there, understanding your good patterns and your bad patterns, and what your deeper self or your authentic self is asking you to express.
Yeah.
So, getting an idea of what perhaps your purpose is in life, but you're aligning that back to your values and your strengths and really understanding who you are. And that's what's giving you that understanding of what that deeper purpose is. So, the key point of the authentic life is not a perfect life, it's actually a truthful life. It's about tapping into your truth.
Yeah.
And the blueprint is already actually within you, hence why we call it the authentic life blueprint, because you do already live with the blueprint within you. And it becomes clearer as you build that relationship with yourself, and it becomes more honest, more loving, and a deeper, respectful relationship. So
And you
that's
move,
really what the
yeah,
authentic life blueprint gives you.
and you move from a place of self-love and inspiration instead of a place of forced motivation. That was a big one
Yeah.
for me. I lost 10 kilos and got back in the gym from doing that blueprint. I've still got weight
Right.
to lose, but my diet's totally different. I'm totally different with food. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, for me, what I wanted to express the authentic life blueprint is a form of self-expression from me.
Mm,
And that's, as I said, it's the beginner book. We've got an intermediate level and then the mastery level.
yeah,
And as that beginner one, it was all about getting people to understand that self relationship requires truth and it requires love. And
yeah.
it's that self love. And it's not the woo woo, oh, addy, 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 love. It's
No, no, no.
actually deep, authentic
Genuinely.
love, a very
Because you can
powerful
only
love.
love yourself when you really know and accept yourself. So you've got to go on that journey of self-discovery. And I can tell you as a person that's got lived experience of PTSD and did years of therapy after a really awful situation that was a near-death experience for me, that if you're stuck and you need to do some healing, this is the thing that will shift it, because that's what happened. And I'd done all kinds of therapy and working with all different people and trying to deal with things. And I've done it. You named, I've done it. And I got a little bit out of everything and enough to keep me going. But the endless cycles of anxiety and the
Mm.
stress and things, I knocked them on the head because I learned how to do it with the blueprint. Mm.
Yeah. When you're able to actually heal your relationship with yourself through implementing these strategies and not through punishment, because
Oh
that's
God.
the thing when we look at
Yeah.
with what you had gone through,
Mm.
there's still a lot of, I've got to do better, I've got to do more, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and how dare I feel like this? And then we get label ourselves with these things of, well, I've got PTSD and I've got this, and we then become our label,
Mm.
and we white knuckle through life, and
Oh
that's
God. Yeah.
just that has it's so harsh on the
Yeah.
body. And you
It's just
may be speaking
impossible to
truth
sustain.
there, but you may be speaking truth of going, well, I've got PTSD, and that is truth. But where's the love behind that?
Yeah.
Where's the compassion behind that? And it's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
same the other way when you are being loving without having that honest conversation with yourself. It's
Mm.
avoidance then, when we go, well,
Yeah.
I just really need to just lay on the couch for a bit and pat myself because, well, I've had such a bad day and things are really,
And
really bad.
sometimes you might need to do that for an hour, but you
Yeah,
can't
for
live
an
there.
hour of that, but that's it. But where I'm coming from that is when you're doing it all the time because you're avoiding the
Yeah.
truth of what's
Yeah.
actually going on. You actually need to have love and truth dual. They need to be together. It needs to be duality. And so if you're able to heal your relationship through that honest conversation that you have with yourself with a
Yeah.
loving presence behind it,
Mm.
because you've got that deep understanding of who you are,
Yeah.
you heal on a very different level. You don't
You
just
do.
heal on a physical level, you'll heal, or just say even on a surface level, you'll heal on a cellular level, on a spiritual level. You'll
Yeah.
just, your whole life will actually heal. And
It
it's
will.
almost like you're
Yeah.
healing the past, as well. It just automatically, when you start to heal yourself and heal it on such a deep, deep level through that authentic process, you're also healing the past. And that means the
Yes.
past
Yeah.
doesn't have a hold on you anymore. And you're able to actually
Mm.
have room to then move forward and grow.
Yeah,
And that's what
absolutely.
happens.
And, my stomach has healed weirdly.
Ah, look at that.
My reflux is gone. Like, it's just, and I don't know why. Didn't change my diet, didn't do anything. Just, well, I did change my diet actually. I started eating better, eating good food purely from, and stopped craving shitty food
Mm,
because that void inside, which craved something and needed something, was filled by me.
yeah, yeah. And it
That
was the
that was
loving
12
you.
weeks. It was
It was the
profound.
loving you, the real you. And when you do
Absolutely.
get that, you do find that these external sort of cravings
Drop away.
disappear. They just
Yeah, I couldn't
disappear.
give a shit. Couldn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Now and again, yeah, let's go out for dinner and have a glass of
Yeah.
wine or I might have a bit of ice cream. So what? Doesn't control my life anymore,
No.
you know? Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, it is
Yeah.
amazing. But 12 weeks, I would have paid $1,200 for that thing. I seriously
Well,
would have.
yeah, I think $50 for the book, and that's 50 Australian dollars is,
Every lesson's worth at least
it's pretty
$100
bloody
bucks.
it's a
Oh,
huge bargain,
oh my
which is
god.
why which is why we've got the coaching program there as well. So if people do want to go deeper,
Yeah.
they've got the coaching program. But the self-paced one, yeah, just grab the book. Look, there are signs once you go through the blueprint and you start doing the work, you'll actually find that there are signs that you can look out for to show that your self-relationship is healing. And I
Mm,
mean, one of the things for Kat, as she said, was her gut got better. She also lost 10 kilos.
mm,
But these are just some of the things that you'll find. I'm just going to read this out to you because these are different things that we've gotten from different people that have actually gone through the workbook. So you pause before you automatically say yes. And where that comes from is that when you understand your values and you understand that you're not just trying to please people, you'll
mm.
take a step back and go, something that you may have said yes to all the time, you'll go, no, I don't want to say yes. That actually doesn't align with what I want to do. And I don't actually want to do it. So I'm going to be truthful to myself and say, no, I don't want to do that. And I've had a few people who've actually said that to me, that the book has
Yep.
really given them permission to be able to go, no, that's not what I want to do, because they loved pleasing people,
Yeah.
similar to what we were talking about earlier on.
Yep.
You trust your own perception more. So when you trust
That's a
you,
good
you know
one.
that you're making decisions that are aligned to your truth.
Yep.
That's the other thing. You stop needing everyone to understand your choices. This is something that we were talking about earlier on. You
Yeah.
don't need to defend yourself. You don't need to, explain yourself to people. You just do your thing
Yeah.
because it's important to you.
Mm.
You can hear your own needs without judging them.
That's that in itself is a priceless skill. Amazing. Mm.
And you no longer confuse peace with boredom.
Mm. Mm.
And that is quite powerful, that, because I know a lot of people go, "Oh, I don't like being in my own company because,
Oh, I love my own company.
I get bored, I have to be around people." But that's because you don't like your own company. So when you start
Oh
to
god, I hate being
like
around
who
loads
you
of
are and
people.
you start to love who you are, you'll find that you actually really enjoy those moments where you don't have anybody around you and it's just you and
Mm.
your inner self,
Yeah, it's
and it
fantastic.
is, yeah, and
Nothing to be
it
afraid of.
grounds you.
Mm.
It does totally ground you.
Mm.
You become less available for misalignment.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good
Well, I
one
know
because
that
people like
happened
to
to you
play
a lot.
games. Hmm?
That happened to you a lot when you started doing the blueprint. You were going, "No, I'm letting go of that. It's not aligned with me."
Yeah, I actually
And
let a
yeah,
lot of friendships not lapse. I just stopped putting effort into them and recognized they
yeah,
were one way. And actually, I had one friendship where someone gave me a bit of a hard time, and I was like, "Whoa, hang on a second, this is a load of shit." And I just said, "I'm not going to tolerate this behavior. If you're going to carry on like that, bye bye."
yeah,
And they've recently come back to me and apologized and said, "You know what? I was under a lot of pressure. I'm not going to justify my behavior." They told me a bit more context, and
yeah.
then said, I realized looking back that I'd made a terrible mistake and I'd accused you of something that was nothing to do with you. I went, oh. And they said, so please accept my sincerest apology.
Yeah.
And because I said to them, you're calling me again before we continue having any kind of contact, we'll need to clear the air. Now, I probably
Fantastic.
would, and I did it calmly. So
Yeah,
that's the other thing that the blueprint gives you is a calm sense of I don't need to get angry. I don't need to get upset. I'm just going to speak my truth. And then I will respond depending on how you react to that. And this person said, yep, yep, that's totally fair. Let's have a conversation about it. I'm sorry. I went, okay.
I think, like, if I look at the other folks that have gone through it, I think every single one of them went through letting go of certain relationships that were
Yeah.
misaligned,
Yeah.
that they were just holding on to because they were pleasing that other person.
And they were
And
familiar. And they were
yeah,
familiar.
yeah,
And they felt
correct.
guilt. A
Yeah.
lot of empathetic people feel guilt at letting go of friendships,
Yeah, they do. They do.
particularly old
So
ones that have been around for a long
that
time.
seems to be quite a common pattern that happens, that as they
Yeah.
start to go through the blueprint, they reevaluate all the relationships in their lives and go, no.
Yeah.
And that also, as I said, you end up making decisions from clarity instead of panic, which is exactly what you did there with that conversation of saying, well, we'll need to get together and have a conversation about this in
Yep.
person, not just over the phone.
Because you
And you're
set
not
your
doing it out of
boundaries.
panic. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
you
being
set
very
your
clear
boundaries.
inside of yourself as to
Yep,
why you're doing that. Yeah.
and not coming
And
from a place of being hurt or angry
no,
because you're able to and this sounds weird because it's normally used around kids, you're able to self-soothe.
Yeah.
because you are in
Yes.
control of yourself. You've grown into that space. You don't need other people to soothe you. You can do it yourself. You might certainly have moments where you're upset that things have hurt your feelings or there's been a situation. I know I was certainly hurt at the outset of that, but I worked through it quickly and let it go quickly and honestly assessed what had I done. Okay, yeah, no, they've got the wrong end of the stick here. That's a shame. I feel sad about that, but I'm going to let that go. And then they've come back and apologized. So, in the past, I might have given them a massive serve, which would have been pointless. And then they probably never would have come back and that
Yep.
relationship would never have healed. But I
Yeah.
forgave myself and my any lack of judgment I might have shown, and I forgave them. And that's
Yeah.
something else that I'm shit at in the past, cannot forgive to save my life. But that's something else that the workbook has taught me is the power of forgiveness.
Forgiveness is massive. And in the next book, in our intermediate level, we will actually go into forgiveness even more. So we touch on it in the blueprint, but we go quite detailed into it in the intermediate level, which is really
Oh, I
cool.
can feel myself squirming already at the scariness of that, but I know I'm up for the challenge.
Yeah. So with what you've just described, though, that comes back to the last point that I've got here, which is you feel more at home in your own life. And I know for me, through my personal growth journey, because everything that I've got in this blueprint has been all of the stuff that I have utilized and gone, these things are really powerful and they
Yeah.
really help people shift.
Yep.
And I put that into a beginner's book. And I know that you've said to me, oh, even for a beginner's book, it's
It's full
quite,
on.
full on. But to me, it's like it's the core things that you need to start to really get to know you.
Yeah.
And as you do get to the end of it, you do feel more at home in your own life. And I know that that was the case with myself.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, as I said, people do a pre-assessment and a post-assessment. And one of the things through the post-assessment, when they've gone back to look at the two,
Yeah.
they've gone, "Oh my God, I have jumped dramatically in certain areas," and they feel a lot more happier within themselves. So
Yeah.
that's the power of, the self relationship in what it looks like when it's healed. That's basically the signs that you'll get. So
Mm.
healing self relationship often feels less like becoming louder, and it's more about getting that clarity in your
Yeah.
life. And as I said, that last part about feeling at home within yourself. And that's
Yeah.
really know that you're on your way to a good healing journey when that happens.
Yeah,
So
you feel so much more unruffled. Yeah, for me, it was the anxiety. The anxiety has, I mean, virtually gone. Like it's gone back to a healthy place. You do
yeah,
need to have some anxiety in your life when you
yeah.
are standing on the edge of a cliff and thinking, oh, I could fall over there. I'm anxious about that. I'm going to walk away from the edge. That's normal. But the constant niggly monkey mind anxiety, it's all gone.
And that's
Gone,
wonderful.
gone,
I love that.
gone.
Because
Yeah.
I think of different situations that we've had over the last 12 months, and these are things that I know my younger self would have been totally freaked out over.
Oh, God, yeah.
And,
Absolutely shitting
you know,
bricks.
and I'm just looking at it going, "Yeah, it'll be all right."
We will work it out one way or another.
Exactly. And you cross that bridge when it comes to it.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing, rather than trying to control it and going, "Oh my god, I'm freaked out," and creating a whole story around it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that takes us to that part about it's really important about rebuilding that relationship with yourself. It really, really is, because that's
Number
the
one
difference that
priority.
you'll see, as I said,
Yeah.
younger self versus who I am today.
Yes.
And I think there is just these are probably some reflective practices that you can actually use. You can ask yourself some questions. Look at the questions that you ask yourself on a daily basis. What are the type of questions that you actually ask yourself? Are they powerful, empowering questions, or are they questions that you're pulling yourself down with? Like, why did I do that? Or you could
Why am
ask
I so
yourself,
lean and fit?
yeah, exactly. Or you could ask yourself some more empowering questions. And these are just some questions that you can ask yourself. Where am I currently betraying my own truth?
Ouch.
Okay. Very deep. What
Mm.
am I pretending not to know?
Mm. Yep,
And what part of my life looks right but does not feel true?
that's a massive one.
That is massive. So I'll leave you with those. There's plenty more, but I'll leave you with those ones. Do a little bit of an exercise around that. And
Mm.
maybe, okay, one more. What would a loving relationship with myself actually look like today?
Mm. Yep.
That'll be a nice one to end with. So, what would that look like? And
Mhm.
what are the strategies that you need to put in place to start building on that?
Oh, I'm going to go make some broccoli and go to the gym. Yep.
So just do a really simple self-relationship check-in. Okay. Okay, let's end this with a little, because this has been a pretty deep session. So now, what do I need to fix? That's all you have to ask yourself now. You don't need to fix anything, okay? You don't need to prove anything to anybody. All you need to do is to be honest about your current situation.
Yep.
Yeah. So your authentic life does not actually begin with everything on the outside of you. It has to be perfect. It actually begins when you stop leaving yourself behind. And
Mm,
it begins when you're willing to listen inwardly, tell the truth, honor what you actually find, and build a life that reflects on who you really are.
love it. Love it.
So thank you for listening. We would love to hear from you. So please provide your comments below, and subscribe to our channel, because that
Mm,
helps us get the message out there even more. And the link to the Authentic Life Blueprint is below in the description as well. So until next time, thank you again, and think beautifully and live brilliantly. Take care.
bye, guys.
We'd like to say a huge thank you to our incredible audience for your continued support. Our mission is to ignite your spark, empowering you to be a beacon of light for others. We'd love to hear from you. So if you've got any questions that you would like answered in future episodes, or just want to share some insights, connect with us on our Facebook community page. If you're looking for additional resources, go to our website. You'll find the link below. And remember, the absolute best way to help us grow is to share this episode with your friends and family, and to subscribe to the Art of Beautiful Thinking podcast. So until next time, think beautifully and live brilliantly.